All right, it's my privilege, honor to be the last one. Change. So, implementing all of the things that we've been talking about this week is going to be about change, right? If you implement the learning from this week, it's going to be about implementing change. And implementing change is about influence. If hopefully you got this week that we feel influence is probably the most important leadership skill there is. Leadership is about influence. And so implementing change is about influence. I mean, I guess you could go and tell people, we're changing. This is how we're going to do it now. But that's not how we said we should be leading this week, right? And so we want people to commit to change. And the way we get people to commit to change is through the use of influence. So how do you feel? How do you all feel about change? See? 3? Oh, 3-5. That's fairly negative and fairly intense. It's hard to change. Change is hard. Anyone? How do your colleagues feel about change? How do your teams feel about change? No way. Resist. Yeah, that's normal. Change is an emotional experience. Let me draw again. I'm going to draw again for you. I'm going to use this at some point. There. I'll get back to that. So change is an emotional experience. We all have emotional responses to change. 2/3 of change or transformation initiatives fail. 2/3 fail. Most of those fail because we fail to take into consideration that change is about people, not necessarily about process, or it's about both process and people. And if you ask me, it's about people first, process second. Because people have to make things happen. Change is about people and influencing people. And so we talk about person-centered change. Okay, I need an assistant. First person to make eye contact. Okay. I'm going to talk to you about promoting change, and I'm going to use a bunch of stories and research. And this is my notes, but I'm going to have you tell me. So all I need you to do is when I make a gesture at you to read the bold one, the ones in front of the numbers. The other stuff I may ask you to talk about, because that's data. Okay. So I have no disclosures. Successful change is about clear direction times ample motivation times supportive environment. Clear, right? There it is. No, it's not. That's not clear. I mean, maybe that's clear, but that's not. That's clear direction, ample motivation, supportive environment. All the stuff I'm going to talk to you about here in this section comes from a book called Switch. I recommend it highly. It's an excellent exploration of how to influence behavior. This is about how do we influence people to make the behavioral decisions we need them to make for our change to stick. That's what we're doing. Clear direction, ample motivation, supportive environment. Those are just words. I have a metaphor for you to make this a little clearer. It's this one, the elephant and the rider. Anyone seen this before, this metaphor? Yes? Good. Rider's the rational mind. The elephant's the emotional mind. The path is the environment. You can already see where we think the power lies. The emotional, right? Not surprising. Change is an emotional experience. I mean, the rider can control the elephant, sort of. But if the elephant wants the cookie that's over there, the elephant's going to go get the cookie. Rider's not going to be able to do too much about it. Riders, so do you see Clear direction, rational mind, the rider. Ample motivation, emotional mind, the elephant. Supportive environment is the path, right? So that really equates to this. So let me talk to you just a second about the rider or the rational mind. And the rider is in charge of self-control. Really, it's in charge of creativity and persistence and problem solving, right? The rational mind. We think we are rational beings and we have processing and analysis. And the truth is that our riders get exhausted quickly. Our riders, so we offload a lot of our behavior into habit. I think I talked about this earlier in the week, but 40-something% of our behavior is habit, because it makes it easier for our rational minds to process other things, right? So you put, like when I said, you get up in the morning, do you think about what you're about to do next, or do you just do it so you can listen to your music or your podcast? So riders get exhausted quickly. They're easily exhausted. There is no such thing really as multitasking. The only real version of multitasking that there is I'm executing a habit and I can do something else while I'm doing that. That's it. Otherwise, we work in serial, not breakfast cereal, but in a line, serial, one thing at a time. And so riders get exhausted quickly. The thing about that, so the processing necessary for us to process new things is pretty dramatic. Cognitive overload happen. Like this week is a bit of cognitive overload for you all. And we run into cognitive overload pretty quickly. So things that are routine, that are habit, doesn't take much processing. Things that are new take a lot of processing. Think about the ways we make our lives easier through technology. I'll give you the GPS. GPS, sat-nav, those, right? Familiar with, right? You put it in the car and then it tells you what to do. So you don't have to think about it. I don't have to plan it in advance. I just plug it in and then it tells me, take a left, take a right, go another. Yeah. I hope I have the right destination in because I could end up who knows where. So think about, you're going to go someplace new. You've put it in the GPS. And you're taking a familiar route for now, but eventually it's going to take you somewhere you've never been before. So you're on the familiar route, you're driving. Do you like to listen to music in the car, podcasts, or music? Or maybe there's someone with you and you're having a conversation. And then the GPS tells you to get off at an exit you've not been to before. What's the first thing you do? Turn the music, thank you. I have a pen, I give it. Turn the music down. Or tell the person in the passenger seat, shut up, shut up, shut up. I have to pay attention now. Right? That's because I can only do one thing at a time. I have to come out of habit and routine and go into new things. New things, a lot of processing. Okay, here's an exit. What happened? I don't know. I have to pay attention. There might be a stop sign. There might be a traffic light. I don't know what to do. Is it a left or a right? So I have to pay attention. Riders easily overwhelmed. I say all of these things to you to tell you that rider strategies for change, so change that operates at the cognitive level, generally are going to be tough because people's brains are full already. And so I will have strategies for you to influence people through cognitive means, and I'll tell you that probably we want to use more than that as we think about how we're going to influence people to choose the behaviors we want them to choose as they go through change. One more thing. Fundamental attribution error. Is this familiar to any of you? Fundamental attribution error. This is about attributing people's behavior to their personality and not to the situation that they find themselves in. An example I give, at least in the US, the example I give, there's a road, a highway outside of Philadelphia that is always traffic, always. It's, stop and go, inch forward, inch forward, inch forward. This is the road I have to take to get to CHOP. And the example I'll give is, okay, so you're sitting on that inch forward, inch forward. And then the sports car comes down the shoulder, zooms past everybody. And how do you feel about that? 110. What gesture do you use for that? So what? Keep it safe. Okay, so most people respond to that with some sort of negative response and an assumption about that person. Like, why are you so special? Why do you get to go first? You jerk. So I'm attributing this behavior to who this person is. This person feels like they are better than us. This person is a jerk. This person, or so I layer in another piece of information and say, okay, what if I told you that person just received a phone call that their child is in our emergency room, CHOP emergency room? Now what do you think? Oh, everybody out of the way. Interesting. So that's fundamental attribution error. That's me attributing the behavior to who you are as a person and not the situation you find yourself in, right? I'm running through these stop signs not because I'm an entitled jerk, but because my kid is in the emergency room. We don't do this to ourselves, but we're really nice to ourselves, right? When we have behaviors like that, we don't assume that we're jerks because we acted that way. We know that it's a situation we're in. Fundamental attribution error. And I put that out there to say, if and when people resist change that we're trying to put in, please do not commit the fundamental attribution error. That is, let's not blame it on who they are as a person, but some situation that they find themselves in. They're just stubborn. Okay, don't say that. Don't call them jerks. Good. That's a good place to start. It's natural for us to do this. We have to be aware that this is going on. And people will resist the changes we want, and we might not be happy about it. We have to resist blaming it on who they are as a person, and then instead go with, okay, they're in a situation. Let me be curious about that and how I can influence them into the direction that helps the change. Okay, so let's talk about some strategies to help people make the right decision. I'm going to talk to you about 3 different strategies per each portion of our metaphor. So 3 strategies for the rider, 3 for the elephant, and 3 for the path. Remember what I said about rider strategies. Yes, we have them, and riders are overloaded. So we can use them, we're just going to want to use more. And I'll say at the outset that not every strategy works for every person. And so you're going to want to use multiple strategies to try and influence people to shift behavior. Okay. Now I have to look at my assistant and tell me what the first... Jams. Okay, jams. Familiar with jam? Jelly, jam? Okay. There was a study done about jams in a grocery store. So you can go into a grocery store sometimes, and then there'll be a table there, and they have a display. Oh, come and taste the jam. And so they wanted to get an idea of, okay, what sells the most jam? And so on the first day, there's a table there. There's 6 jams on it. There's a person, hey, come taste the jam. 6 jams. The next day, the table has 24 jams. 24. You tell me, which table sells more jam? 6. You all say 6. See, some of this stuff is intuitive. Why 6? Why not 24? Don't we want more choices? You got it, right? This is how cognitively overloaded we are. That the table with 6 jams sells 10 times more likely to have somebody buy from than the 24 jams. Now, more people go to the 24 jam table, but then, like you say, they go, oh, this is too much, and then they leave. The 6 jam table sells more, 10 times more likely. Is that right? Is that what I have on there? Yes. 10 times more likely to buy with 6. So that's cognitive overload. Okay, what's my next one?
Docs and hip surgery.
Docs, so doctors and hip surgery. So hip surgery, fairly invasive, long recovery period, not necessarily a decision to take on lightly. So we did a study with doctors, hip surgery. So patients have done everything that they could do, have gone through all of the pharmaceuticals they could, and we've come to a place where, okay, it's time to make the decision, it's time to do hip surgery. That's where we are. Okay, two different groups. First group, wait. There's one more pharmaceutical we could try. One more. That's the first group. The second group, wait. There's two more pharmaceuticals we could try. Okay. Which of these two groups actually ends up going to hip surgery anyway, more often? The two pharmaceuticals? Why? So, when there's one more pharmaceutical, 47% of the physicians will try it. Now think about that. Less than half will try it, which means more than half will say, never mind that pharmaceutical, go into surgery. Anyway, 47% will try the one. When there's two options, only 28% of those physicians will try either one. What? But there's two that's what happens. Cognitive overload. Apparently one or two. That two is too many. I just keep going. That's it. That's the rider. That's how overloaded riders can be. Okay. The strategy for you here is, because riders are so overloaded, can we offer people a GPS, a sat-nav, for the thing that is changing, so I don't have to think too hard about it, right? If you ask me to try and figure out how to do the new thing, I might just say, I don't have time, I can't, it's too much to think about, let me just do it the old way. Can you just give me a checklist? There's a book called The Checklist Manifesto. Has anyone? Yeah, heard some in the back. Checklist Manifesto. This was about increasing safety, originally increasing safety in airlines, in planes. And so they approached pilots to say, hey, we want to put a safety checklist in your cockpit, so you go through this checklist. And pilots were like, get out of I know what I'm doing. Eventually they convinced some pilots to take it on, and their safety records rocketed up. Right? There's a checklist. They just follow the checklist. We don't have to think. I don't have to, right? I just follow the checklist. It's safer. Then we went to operating rooms with safety checklists. Of course, surgeons said, get out of my operating room. Eventually, they adopted the checklist, and those who adopted checklists, their safety records improved. Right? That's it. Can you give me a script at the very moment of the thing that is changing, the thing that is happening, so that I don't have to think too hard, right? Just be empathetic and compassionate that I am in cognitive overload almost all the time, and you give me a nice set of directions to follow so that I can do the thing you want me to do or you need me to do. Great. Okay.
Vietnam child malnutrition.
Okay, Vietnam child malnutrition. Okay, so in rural Vietnam, there was some widespread child malnutrition issues. And there was a very small nonprofit who wanted to work on that, who wanted to try and improve that. Very small, meaning not a lot of resources, not a lot of money. So they did what they were supposed to do, which is they did a root cause analysis of the childhood malnutrition. And what they discovered was, 1, lack of access to clean water, 2, widespread poverty, and 3, lack of access to infrastructure for like sewage. So a small nonprofit with limited resources looked at those issues and said, that's TBU, true but useless, because what are we, a small nonprofit, going to do about any of those? So they looked a little deeper. Like we're not going to build infrastructure. So they looked a little deeper, and they found that while many families were experiencing malnutrition with their kids, not all of them were, and they were experiencing the same TBU situations, the same issues. So interesting. So 20% of the families are not experiencing this malnutrition issue, but they're in the same situation as the other 80%. They must be doing something interesting there. So that's what they did. They went and looked at those 20%. They found that there was a couple of things that they were doing differently that were easy to communicate. They weren't major things. So they asked those families to go and teach the other families about what they were doing. Do you see? That's a clever one too, right? Rather than the nonprofit saying, oh yeah, let's go tell you how to feed your family, they actually had their colleagues do it. And then malnutrition rates drop. That one we call find the bright spots. Is someone successful at this already? Is someone already doing this thing well? Can I find the bright spots? And think about this in terms of limited resources, right? Root cause analysis said there are these huge, challenging issues. Can I still be successful in spite of the huge, challenging issues? Yes, I can. All right, one more. Teach for America. Okay, there's an organization in the U.S. called Teach for America. This teachers that are coming out of university as new teachers will often, for this organization, be placed in underserved communities. So communities who have struggles with education as part of a deal to like pay off student loans and et cetera. And because they want to. So there was a woman who went into an underserved community. She found that she was going to teach first grade. And she found that in that community, many of the students could barely hold a pencil. Many of them did not have the alphabet. Many of them couldn't count past 8, 9, 10. Real challenges. First grade, she was supposed to teach. So one of the many things she tried to do was, how do I inspire these people, these kids, to learn rapidly, because they're going to have to catch up. And she thought, what do first graders value more than anything else? What do first graders really want? Well, yes, play. First graders really want to be older, right? I want to be a second grader, because second graders are cooler than first graders. So here's what she did. She said, by the end of this year, you're not going to be second graders. You're going to be third graders. I mean, tell a bunch of first graders that they are going to be even better than the other kids. We're going to be third graders. You're only going to be second graders. Now, clearly there's a lot of work between when she started and getting them to the end of the year. The thing is, she just kept reminding them, remember, we're going to be third graders, and it got them to adopt better study behaviors. And by the end of the year, they tested out not quite as third graders, but as maybe middle of second grade. So she took them from underperforming to overperforming across that year. And we call that point to the destination. That is, can you provide a compelling destination? Brenda talked about strategic planning, vision. That's sort of what this is. Can you articulate a really compelling vision? And what ends up happening here with the rider is, you tell the rider, we're going to go here. We're going to be third graders. The rider starts to say, oh, how are we going to do that? So the rider is trying, because that's what riders do, figure stuff out, problem solve. Give the rider a problem to solve, which honestly distracts the rider from arguing with you about whether or not we should do it, but rather how I can do it. Is it tricky? A little bit. A little bit. It's also a segue to getting us to the elephant, because that feels inspiring to me, right? This point to the destination, this compelling vision of an exciting future. But it's really to trick the rider and to start problem solving. How are we going to get to this cool future, rather than arguing with you about whether or not we're going to do that? Okay, those are our rider strategies. Remember, in fact, you'll see that these rider strategies are about either distracting the rider or just acknowledging that riders are overloaded and we have to deal with that in some way, right? Let me give you a checklist so that your rider doesn't have to think too much. All right, let's move to the elephants stuff.
That's purchasing director.
Purchasing director. Stay with me, this is actually okay. This story's going to be okay. I know purchasing director sounds like a snoring, boring. Okay, so an organization that was geographically distributed. So that means lots of locations all over the geography, right? So if I think of all over the country, right, there's an organization that has sites everywhere. And they didn't have centralized purchasing. That means all of those sites bought whatever they thought they needed and whatever kind of thing they needed, whatever brand that they thought it was. It gets expensive. So they hired a new purchasing director who went and toured all of those sites and said, this is costing us a fortune. We should be centralizing purchasing, which is actually a good idea, so that we can negotiate better prices and we standardize on the types of things that we use. And so he did what he should do, which is he put a PowerPoint together and went to the executive boardroom and talked to the executives and said blah, 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 blah. And that's what the executives heard too. They're like, okay, whatever, sure. That's cute. Purchasing is boring. Thanks. See ya. And nothing happened. So how does he get their attention? Well, what he discovered along the way was that the organization was buying, check me on this, 424 different kinds of gloves. 400, apparently there are more than 424 different kinds of gloves out there. This organization was buying all of them. Anywhere from $3 to $24, is that right? $17, $3 to $17 they were spending on all these different kinds of gloves. So he told his team, okay, go get me a pair of every one of those types of gloves, put them in a box. Next time he goes to the executive boardroom, he has this giant box of gloves with the price tags on them about how much each of them costs. So instead of his PowerPoints, he just walks into the room and dumps 424 gloves onto the table and says, this, friends, is what we're doing in this organization. And then he gets a reaction. What? Why are we buying all these different kinds of gloves? Why is that one $6? Why is that one $12? Why is that one $17? What's happening? And they centralized purchasing. In fact, that worked so well that they sent him on a tour of all of the sites of the organization with his box. It was called the Glove Shrine. With his box to explain why centralization of purchasing is happening, so he could go dump the box on everybody's desk. So what did he do? He got their attention through an emotional means. Find the feeling. So he got some emotional response from the people who he needed to behave in a certain way. Now, we may be fortunate in this room because of the organizations that we work for. It might be easy for us to connect the work that we do to an emotional space, right? Like the patients that we have, the families that we serve, right? That's why I have that kid up there, to connect to the mission of the organization or the work. Can you connect the thing you're doing to some emotional response? Can you connect to some feeling that gets people motivated to implement this change? We're motivating that elephant. All right, hit me again.
Loyalty cards.
Oh, this one's good. Loyalty cards. So loyalty card would be, so in the US we have, for example, a coffee shop maybe would give you a card that's blank, and then every time you buy a coffee, they put a stamp or they put a hole in it, and then after you buy a certain number, you get one for free. Familiar with that idea? Okay. So think about this in context of a car wash instead. So we did a study with the loyalty cards and a car wash to see how quickly we can get people to do the free car washes. Okay. We used two different cards. First card has 8 blanks on it. That's it, 8 blanks, right? So get 8 car washes, the 9th one is free, right? 8. Here's the second card. 10 blanks on it. 2 of them are already stamped. Okay, wait, you're chuckling, and I know why. Hang on. All right, I want you to put your elephants outside the room. No elephants in this conversation, right? So your elephants out there, only riders. I want to talk to only the riders. What's the difference between these two cards? Riders. So 8 and 10 minus 2 is the same. But you all know intuitively which one is better. Elephants come back in the room. Which card is more effective? 10 minus 2. You all know that. You know it's goofy to think that, and you still think it. That's how powerful the elephant is. Yes, it's more. So the 10 with 2 stamped gets more free car washes and gets them faster than the 8 blanks. Which means you know you're being tricked. There it is. We call that shrink the change. Can you make the change feel smaller? Feel like less work, less effort? Can you shrink the change? I do this with cleaning the basement. So I have a basement of the house, and it's got boxes and stuff all over the place and in it. And if you were to tell me to go, just clean the basement, can we clean the basement this weekend? No, that's like 10 hours. I'm not doing that. Well, we'll do it next weekend, and then next weekend, and next weekend, next weekend. Here's what works. Go in the basement, set an alarm for 20 minutes. Start. Alarm goes off, stop, leave. Do the same thing next weekend, the weekend after. That's called shrinking the change. It's not as big a deal anymore. It's the same amount of work, I just do it over time, and it feels smaller, and it doesn't feel like I have to do that much. Are there opportunities for you to shrink the change? Can the change feel smaller? 8 blanks or 10 minus 2? 10 minus 2, look how far I've gotten already. That's what it is. It feels smaller than 10 minus 2. Okay, hit me again. Roxy the nanobot. All right, let's go to a children's hospital, oncology. So these are kids, and when I say kids, let's say 10 to 13 years old or so, being released from oncology to go home. And when they go home, they have pharmaceuticals to take, right? They have a big pharmaceutical. And when you release them, you tell them, it's really important for you to take all of these drugs. You have to take them on time. This is what they do. Make sure you do that. And then they go home. And the adherence to that pharmaceutical regimen is not great. They miss a lot of dosages. And it's risky to miss, right? It's risky to miss those dosages. So if you miss 20% of those dosages, it doesn't increase your risk by 20%. It increases your risk by 200%. Bad to miss. And yet, adherence is low. So what do we do to fix that? So we tried something. We created, of course, a video game, Roxy the Nanobot. And here's what happens in that video game. Roxy the nanobot is a nanobot, so tiny robot that swims in the bloodstream and shoots cancer cells. That's the game. 20 levels in this game, and after you complete a level, it plays a video, educational video, like what did the pharmaceuticals do and what's the dosages, and 20 educational videos. You can't skip them, you have to watch them to get to the next level. So first, I know I'm in elephant strategies here, but educational videos is a rider strategy, right? Educational video is a rider strategy. I'm talking to the rational. So did this work? What do you think? Well, yeah, like, would I tell you this story if it didn't work? Like, yeah, that didn't work. And oh, no. Yeah, it worked. Except the question is, why did it work? Because past the levels. Motivation, good. Let me give you one more piece of information that may help you answer this question of why it worked. It didn't matter how many levels the kid finished, adherence went up. So whether I did 2 levels, which means I watched 2 educational videos, or I did all 20, adherence went up in both cases. So it didn't matter how many videos I watched, which tells me the videos don't matter. Say more about the story. I might have to give you the pen if say more about it's the story.
Well, they connect to the story, to the nanobot.
I'm staggered by this. You're the only person that's ever gotten this response. For real. Like in all the times I do this at CHOP. You're the only person that has gotten this. It's about connected, so people identify with Roxy the nanobot. These are kids, 10 to 13-year-old kids, right? Who are being released to go home. They have taken on the identity of the sick kid in the hospital, right? It's been extended hospital stay. That's it. Their identity now is I'm the sick kid. I'm different. I'm sick. And he released them to go home, and they're going back to school, and they're going back to their friends, and they don't want to be the sick kid anymore. They're tired of being the sick kid. And taking the pharmaceuticals reminds them, oh, no, you are the sick kid. You're still different. Roxy the nanobot changes that. Roxy the nanobot says, just like with our first graders who were going to be third graders, Roxy the nanobot says, you're a warrior. You're a hero kid. Take those drugs, hero kid, and that's what happens. Because if you ask the kids why they take it, like, I'm a superhero. Of course I'm taking the drugs. So it became part of their identity is what that is. It's connected to meaning. So can you connect what you need people to do to the type of person they want to be? I am the kind of person who would do this. So it's similar to finding feeling. It's really about connecting to the meaning of the thing. One of the things we've learned is that by asking nurses why they decided to be nurses reduces nursing attrition. It's reminding them the meaning of the work, and so, like, oh yeah, there is a really good reason why I do this work. Just keeping them reminded of the meaning behind the things that they do. Okay. Speaking of emotional journeys, that's what this is. So this is the emotional journey people travel when they're asked to implement a change. And so this is time, and this is intensity of emotion. And if we start here, you may recognize this emotional journey as I go through it, by the way. Shock, denial, frustration, depression, say it with me, experimentation. This is a grief cycle. Negotiate, yeah. Kubler-Ross grief cycle. This is the Kubler-Ross change curve. This is the emotional experience people have as they implement change. Everybody goes through it. Change is an emotional experience. And so not everybody has this level of intensity, and people go through it at a different pace, different rate. But this is the emotional journey people are on. And we have to be aware of this and supportive of people as they go through it. And so the elephant is busy too when we're talking about change. All right, last set of influence behaviors shape the path. I love these strategies. These are my favorite strategies because it's about shaping the environment around people to influence behavior rather than trying to convince you in some way to do something. You'll see what I mean in a second. Hit me with my next story.
Clocky Milk ATM.
Okay, clocky. Snooze button. You all familiar with the idea of the snooze button on an alarm clock? Anybody here struggling with snooze buttons? Oh, this week in particular, are you struggling with snooze buttons? Snooze button. Evan, I have a solution for you. It's called Clocky. I'm not making this up. It's a real thing. You can Google it. It's called Clocky. It looks just like a regular alarm clock. You put it on the nightstand, set the alarm. When the alarm goes off, it makes the noise, and it flashes some lights, and it jumps off the nightstand and rolls around your room. No more snooze button. You are out of bed. Problem solved. I didn't have to try and convince you. You're skeptical. I didn't have to try and convince you that hitting the snooze button is bad for your health in some way. I didn't have to try and convince you should just get up on time and stop hitting the snooze button, any of that. No, I just put Clocky on your nightstand. Did you get out of bed when the alarm went off? You did. Milk is the second one, right? So in grocery stores, at least in the US, most commonly purchased items, bread, milk, eggs. In the US, where do they put those things? In the supermarket. Way the heck in the back. Yes, everywhere else too? This is a universal thing. Like, oh, the thing you want? Yeah, it's about a mile that way. Okay. Why? Because the point of a grocery store isn't to make life easy for you, it's to sell you stuff. And so I don't have to try and convince you should buy more stuff. I just put what you want all the way back there and rely on the fact that you will probably grab something else along the way, especially if you have the little children with you who are grabbing stuff off the shelves too. That's right, and then at the checkout line, maybe you have right at child eye level, right? Yep. All of that is shaping the environment, right? We're shaping the path. I'm not trying to advertise anything to you. I just put all of the cool stuff right where the kids want it. All right, last of the three is ATM. So in Europe, this ATM challenge was solved long ago. In the US, who refuses to listen to any other countries, apparently, took forever. Here's the problem. The ATMs have been around a long time. 1980s-ish, does that sound about right? I think it was invented in like 1968, but they became prevalent in the 70s, 80s. And in the US, the problem was people would lose their ATM card in the ATM. They wouldn't lose it, they'd leave it there and walk away. And so I know in Europe you solved it right away. We did not. Our attempted solutions, here they were. Well, we should make the thing beep so that you remember to take your card out. Slightly better. All right, so that worked a little bit, but not a lot. We'll make it flash at you and beep. No, people still lose. And it's expensive for banks for you to lose your ATM card, right? So what I mean lose your card, you put the card in the machine, you put in your code, it gives you the money, and I walk away. And the card is still in there. Lose the card. I know what this, yes, I know, it was so obvious way back then. Well, that's not what we did in the US. We tried all this other stuff, this nonsense. Then we had the banks sending letters to people who were high offenders who lost more than one card, threatening them. All right, if you use your card again, $20 fee. That's a really good way to make people change banks, is what that is. And that's what happened. So we didn't solve this problem in the US until, I want to say, 10 years ago. It was still people losing their card in the machine until about 10 years ago, when the obvious answer, card first. Oh my gosh, why did this take so long? Yes, you put the card in, boop, boop, boop. You got to take the card back, then the money comes out. All that has shaped the path, right? I want you to take your card out, so I shaped the path. Brendan.
Winston Churchill reminds me he had a great quote about Americans, and we always count on Americans to find the right solution after they've exhausted every other option.
And that is what happened here. We tried everything else, none of it worked. Let's try what you all are doing here, and yeah, great. All of that is shaping the path or tweaking the environment. Do I have more?
Yes, we do 2 more.
So there's, in the US, we have this retirement plan that you can contribute to. It's called the 401k. It's just named after the law that does that, which means I can contribute some percentage of my salary to a retirement fund, and the company I work for kind of manages all of that. And it's a really cool plan. It's a good plan, and in order to have it, you need a certain minimum percentage of the workforce participating in that. If you don't get the minimum percentage participating, you can't have one. And I want it, right? So how do we get participation to rise? Once again, we try all the things before we do the one that works. So I could try rider strategies, like just sending messages to everyone. Hey, we have this cool plan. You should try it. It's good for retirement. I could try educational webinars. Hey, let's learn about. None of these things really work very well. We put a booth in the hospital. Someone is trying to flag people down. Hey, come and talk about retirement. People are like, I don't get it. What actually works? Instead of asking you to join it, when we hire you into the company, I enroll you. And just tell you, if you don't want to be enrolled, you can opt out. So the default is you participate, yeah. And that doubles participation rates, because inertia is the most powerful force in the world. Because if I have to do something, I'm not likely to do it. So opt out versus opt in. We have done this with, I think, our electronic medical records sharing, right? I think that's something we've tried, yes.
Donor program
Yes.
initially you have opt out if you don't want to participate. Nevertheless, because not everyone knew, we still kept the culture of asking relatives after that clinical that was established, whether they, by law, we have the power to take the organs, but do you agree with that? And when you say calmly that to them, I think attrition rate is still above 80-85%. So you need to balance opt-out. Pension fund is easy, but this is, you need to have a second option.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And in the US, we have donor. Would you like to be an organ donor? I don't know that we've gone opt out on that. I still think that's opt in.
Yeah, it's opt-in
In the US. Donor card. Yeah. And if we want to increase participation rates, a strategy would be to make it opt out. Like, you're automatically an organ donor if you don't want to be, like that.
Before you die, sign.
Yeah, that. Yep. That, by the way, won Nobel Prize, so that idea of opt-out. Yeah. Seriously. Behavioral economics, it's called, yes. All right, all of that is tweak the environment. Can you do something in the environment that triggers the behavior that you want, right? So I put the milk in the back. I ask you to take your ATM card out before I give you the thing that you want. I like these two because they can be clever. These strategies can be clever. All right, what's my next?
Hip surgery recovery patient.
Oh, hip surgery. Back to hip surgery. So those patients who went to hip surgery despite having pharmaceutical options from our original example, okay, long recovery period, right? So how can we make sure that people do the things they need to do to recover from hip surgery? And what we need them to do is like get up and move around. That's the best way. So how do we encourage people to do that? So we try two different ways. The regular way, the first way, the regular way we do it is we explain to them rider strategies. Explain to them, it's really important that you get up and move around. It's really important that you walk. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. Okay, good. Go. Second way. Same as all that. It's really important that you get up and move around. Do you understand? Yes. Okay, when will you do that? What do you mean, when will I do? Yes, when during the day will you get up and walk around? Well, I like to have Cheerios in the morning, so maybe after I have Cheerios, I'll get up and walk around. Perfect. Do that. Cheerios, walk around. Go. Does this work? Incorrect. It does work, yeah.
There was some booklets by Benjamin Hartley. It's called like willpower doesn't work. I mean, you need to create environment. You're just creating, it's motivating, but it's like you're not creating the environment. People not for you. You will say that when or how. You just need to create environment. You just doing the same stuff.
So I think where this connects to that is this is habit building. This is a shortcut to habit building. I need you to get into the habit of getting up and moving around. Building habits can take a long time, 60, 90 days. So I habit shortcut. This is called action triggers, actually, action trigger. I'm attaching the behavior I want to a behavior you already have. You eat Cheerios every day, you have a habit.
Why don't you put the Cheerios away? That's what I was thinking.
So I use Cheerios as a goofy example because Cheerios is a funny word. But I think about attach it to any habit somebody already is exhibiting, right? Somebody already has a habit, put the thing you want them to do attached right to it. So that the issue is, if I just tell you, go home and walk, when I go home, I have to figure out if and when I'm going to do that every day. I have to, when am I going to walk? Instead, if I attach it to something you're already doing, then that takes all of that decision making, it takes the rider analysis stuff out of it. Cheerios, walk. It just triggers the next behavior. Or habit, whatever habit. This actually works to build habits. If you want to build a new habit, attach the behavior you want as a habit to something you're already doing. It's going to be a much faster building of habit. Yes. Yes, I love the Pavlov reference. The ring the bell and yep. It does work. I have data for how well this works. Can you read how well this works?
Bathing without assistance in 3 weeks versus 7 weeks.
Bathing without assistance, in 3 weeks for the action trigger versus 7 weeks for not. So in half. Go ahead.
Standing up, 3.5 weeks versus 7.7.
Standing up 3.5 weeks versus 7.7 weeks.
Getting in and out of car in 1 month versus 2.5 months.
Getting in and out of the car 1 month versus 2.5 months. So recovery period cut in less than half by doing action trigger work. So creating habits from already established habits. All right, I have one last. So that is build habits. Can you make this a habit? The thing you want people to do, can you attach it to something they already do? All right, I have one last. Towels at a hotel. So when you go to the hotel, although not here, they don't do it here. Have you ever seen the sign, reuse your towels? Yeah. So the sign that we usually see is, please reuse your towels. We're trying to save energy or save water. And those work some, a little. So we try a different sign. We take that sign and we try a new sign. And the new sign says, most of our guests reuse towels. And 26% increase in towel reusing with that sign. What is that about? Well, people, there's this belonging urge, this peer pressure, other people are doing it, so I should do it too. We call that rally the herd. I'm using the elephants there to rally the herd. So does peer pressure work? I mean, yes. Am I telling you should use peer pressure? I mean, I wouldn't tell you to use peer pressure for that. Yeah. There's a couple of other. So if I really wanted you to reuse towels at the hotel, there's a better way for me to get you to do it. We've already talked about a strategy that would improve reusing. Reward. Oh, interesting reward. So they often do, yeah. So here's two personal stories about reusing towels and rewards. First, I check into a hotel and they tell me, hey, we'll give you bonus points, like whatever points, if you reuse your towels. Oh, that's great. Just call us and tell us you're, I'm out. I'm not calling, right? Checking in a hotel, maybe on vacation or I'm doing work. I'm not calling down to tell you I'm ready. I'm out already. Next, I get to the room and that, $600 jug of water that they put next to the phone, there's a price tag on it. This is $1,000. Or free if you reuse your towels. And then this is where it goes sideways. Just call us. I mean, it's right next to the phone. Nope. Right? I didn't. Inertia's powerful, right? You want me to do something? I can't. So the best way to get people to reuse their towels, opt out versus opt in. We'll assume you want to reuse your towels. If you don't, if you want fresh towels, call us. No one's calling. I mean, maybe some people will, but that's how you. People at hotels have started doing this, by the way. Since I read this book and started doing this lecture, hotels have picked up the opt-out strategy on towel reuse. I kind of want a cut of that because I've been talking about a better way to. I feel like I should have a percentage of that in some way. In the UK, too, UK was experiencing some issues with collecting taxes on time. People were not paying their taxes or paying them on time. And so what they did was wrote a letter and sent it to all of the taxpayers that said, your neighbors pay their taxes on time. And people started paying taxes. All I got is, hey. So can you say something like, I'm looking right here at my friend here who tried to get hand sanitizing to work. Most of our physicians are using hand hygiene techniques. I don't have to try and convince you how wonderful it is, just like all those people that you work with, they're doing it.
And they're promoting it like posters and, being extra, save lives, etc. That wasn't.
Yeah. There's a new technique you can try. Well, now that you have it, but okay. Those are my strategies. Here they are, all 9 of them. Questions, comments, concerns, challenges, issues? Okay. That's it. Thanks, everybody.